When I moved to Ottawa, I realized the gap in, just that community, getting people together to read literature by authors of African and Black descent. And I just thought, what better way, to bring people together, to shape our narrative, one book at a time, also get people to ask questions about what they don't understand. So the book club is 4 years old, and I'm happy to say that I got to know the author last year, discussed his amazing book. I'm happy to have him here today to talk about his newest book. So I'll just go right ahead and read Micheal Afenfia's bio. So Micheal Afenfia is a writer and storyteller. His bestsellers, The Mechanics of Yelogoa and Rain Can Never Know, continue to receive positive reviews worldwide. His other books include When the Moon Caught Fire, A Street Called Lonely, Don't Die on Wednesday. His sixth novel, Leave My Bones in Saskatoon, a novel about the immigration experience, is scheduled for worldwide release in spring of 2023. Well, it's already been released. So he's a lawyer and MBA holder, and Micheal's day job is leading Saskatchewan Association of Immigrant Settlement and Integration Agencies as the executive director. Before then, he worked as a cultural bridging facilitator with Saskatoon Open Door Society. Since arriving in Canada in the summer of 2019, Micheal has served on several committees and boards supporting the community. Presently, he is on the board of Word on the Street Saskatoon and the Multicultural Council of Saskatchewan. He is also a member of the Saskatchewan Writers Guild. In addition to his writing and work in the settlement sector in Canada, he contributes to conversations around race relations and equity for the BIPOC population through published articles and public speaking engagements. In his spare time, Micheal mentors young creatives in his home country, Nigeria, and in Canada. At other times, he can be found watching television, listening to music, or traveling. Thank you. So as we all know, this is a book presentation, so I wouldn't want to give away too many spoilers. If you're curious about any part of the book, please go and buy a copy. There are copies there. Mama. Thank you very much. So, Micheal, first of all, I want to say thank you for writing this lovely book about the immigrant experience. I always say that Canada is marketed to immigrants as a melting pot of culture and acceptance, but nobody tells you the reality of life when you get here. So I'd like to start with the opening poem. Please, can you go ahead and read that and just talk about it briefly?
First off, I hope it's on now. First off, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's here. It's really amazing and exciting coming to a new place and seeing people you haven't met or you don't know turn up for you. So that's really, really exciting. And this morning I said to myself while driving to this venue that otherwise such a lovely place, I'm tempted to leave my bones in Ottawa. But that's a conversation we would have later. So I'm really excited to be here. Thank you to the Ottawa Black Book Club and to the university as well for putting this together and all of the hard work that has gone behind the scene for this event to take place. I'm extremely grateful and excited for this opportunity to share Leave My Bones to Saskatoon in this manner with all of you here. And I would read the book Leave My Bones in Saskatoon. Sort of opens with a poem, was something I would do for most of my books, but had stopped doing it for I think the last two or something. But with this one, the poem kind of came, from my early experiences moving to Canada and to Saskatoon in the summer of 2019, and just sitting down one day and going over an experience I had just had, and I came back home, and then I wrote this poem and sort of found this way into the book. And the poem is called I Lied. I lied. Remember my last photograph, the one you said smile, and I did. Newsflash, that smile was a lie. The picket fence, the fireplace, the call back home saying everything is fine, that too was a lie. But the cold, the blistering wind in February, that was true. Losing myself in my many identities, that again was true. It is true, these hands have never done laundry or shoveled snow, mowed the lawn or lifted heavy things. I have never driven a car or dropped off orders because I burnt every midnight oil. So also my voice was heard, loud in night skies and echoed in the prairies until my truth prevailed. I lied to be here. Will my voice lie too?
Thank you. So I'm going to come back to that poem in the course of our conversation. So this is an immigrant story, and your main character here is Owechu. And like I said, I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but you know, it's when I read the book, for me, it's a Nigerian immigrant experience kind of story. And I would like you to go to page 9 and read from what do you mean she traveled to Canada?
From what part? I can read from, I plan on reading from here from this part to the end of the chapter, to give a context.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay. So, I mean, the book Leave My Bones in Saskatoon, like she said, it tells an immigrant story, but in this case, I thought context was important, that this just wasn't an immigrant who arrived in Canada, and so people might wonder, did they drop from the sky? But to provide a context and background, like they had a life, like they didn't just show up at Subway or McDonald's or wherever, they had a life, right? So it was important that the story showed that part of the main character's life, Owecho, and then balance it up with what the experience was when they then got here. So this was the beginning of the book, and Owecho was still in Nigeria, and why did they even have to leave in the first place? So I'll read. It was a glorious end to an arduous journey that began nearly 2 years ago. Nearly 2 years earlier, and was glad the anxious days and nights were finally over for all of them. So he had just gotten news that his visa to come to Nigeria has been approved. So typical of him and courtesy of his arithmophobia, he couldn't remember the exact day the seed was planted in his head, but he remembered Ene, his wife of 16 years, busting into their bedroom like she was carrying a pot of hot okra soup, and had to immediately drop it to the floor because it was burning her fingers. Owecho, you won't believe what I heard when I went out to make my hair today. What did you hear? He asked, with as much interest as he could feign, considering how hectic his day had been at the TV station. There were stories making the rounds earlier that day concerning the president and his vice. Rumor had it that one of them had shoved the other to the ground at Eagle Square during the National Congress of their political party, sending their media handlers and aides into a frenzy of lies and cover-ups. Unnamed eyewitnesses claimed that reporters were beaten up, video cameras were destroyed, and cell phones were seized in a bid to conceal the truth of what transpired between the two of them. The instruction, or was it threat, from the owner of the station that he didn't want the story mentioned in their hourly news roundup didn't get to the editor until Owecho had read the story twice. Forced to take one for the team, he was severely reprimanded by the general manager and given the rest of the day off to reflect on how his actions had embarrassed the station. Back at home, He thought he had an hour or two for a long bath. He also craved a cold bottle of beer to help him relax and forget his newsroom misadventure. The last thing he wanted to do before calling it a night was lay on the couch in the family room for about an hour or so and watch a couple of informative documentaries about animals and life in the wild on the Smithsonian Channel on YouTube. It was his favorite thing to do whenever he felt stressed or burnt out and needed to unwind. However, Ocho didn't do any of those things on this particular night. Ene's astonishing news about her friend disrupted all the plans he made. Big Bay has gone to Canada, Ocho. You won't believe that someone I consider my friend and confidant left for Canada 2 days ago, and I only heard about it from the lady who braids her hair. Ene flung her handbag on the bed as she spoke. What do you mean she traveled to Canada? Did she go on holiday or something? A puzzled Ocho asked his filming wife. Holiday? Ocho, Big Bay has relocated to Canada with her husband and her child. That is good news then. I'm happy for them, Ocho smiled. Please, whenever you speak to her, send my congratulations her way. Ocho, you don't seem to get where I'm coming from. Ene's frustration was evident from the way she pranced the room. There's time for us to be happy for her and her family, but that time hasn't come yet. For now, I'm trying to process the betrayal. Betrayal? Ocho asked perplexed. Big Bay kept her relocation plans away from me. That is betrayal. Now, not in my craziest dreams did I see that coming. You know, on my way back from the salon, I kept wondering if she thought telling me about her plans would jinx it for her. She probably thought you might tell someone, and that someone would tell another person, and before you know it, the whole Abuja is talking about it. Honey, are you calling me amebo? In fact, you are even taking Big Bay's side in this matter when you should be supporting me. Ene undressed as she spoke, not noticing the disinterested look on his face. She left him in the bedroom to use the bathroom. I am angry, very angry, she continued at the top of her voice, leaving the toilet door open so she could continue talking as she took a leak. Baby, if I were you, I wouldn't worry too much about Big Bay not telling me she was traveling. You know how secretive people are about such things. They want to be sure they have landed in Canada or America or wherever they are headed before talking about it. What if they tell all their friends and family and for some reason they don't travel anymore? Wouldn't that be embarrassing? People will laugh and nobody wants that. When it comes to Big Bay and me, I'm not people. We talk almost every day. We share things and we visit each other regularly. I was at a place 2 weeks ago where she talked about their shoibi for a wedding in Lafayette next month. And during that visit, you didn't observe anything unusual? You would have hinted at our plans? Now that I think of it, someone came to take their generator that day. Ene finished her business in the bathroom, washed and dried her hands before joining him in the room. She even said they sold their solar panels and inverter as well. Silly me, I didn't even ask why they were selling the inverter and generator when the electricity situation in the state hadn't improved. I just assumed they were buying new ones. Remember we changed our generator last year, so I didn't read anything to it. It didn't seem out of place at all. Well, it is what it is. It's still indifferent to what he just said to make her happy. Though he continued with the question, did you get her new phone number when the lady from the lady in the salon? Is there a way you can reach her to tell her how you feel? What do I need her phone number for? She will see me in Canada. And I don't understand. She will see you in Canada. How? We are going to Canada. We are? There's a test of English language. They call it IELTS or something like that. What does that mean? International English Language Testing System. I think it's a way of testing our proficiency in English if you know enough of it to function and blend well when you get to Canada. We have to take that test immediately. We do. We must pass with very high scores. We must. We will download everything this weekend and get as much information as possible about Canada and how to get there. Honestly, Big Bay will be shocked when she hears that we have joined them here. So So.
Thank you very much. I don't think I told anyone I was relocating apart from family. So why do you think, because I know a lot of people are curious, so why do you think there's that secrecy around Jackman?
I don't know. I don't know if it's the same thing for the non-Nigerians in the room. Maybe the experience is different, but strangely for us Nigerians, you know, it has to be a secret. Like you have to keep that secret, like guarded with your life. And even in my case too, like didn't tell anyone. I lived in Yanagua, another city, and would travel to Abuja or Lagos rather, where we did the processing. And sometimes I would spend the night in my sister's house, and she didn't know why I kept coming to Lagos. Until we were sure, and then one day I said to her, "Oh, remember all these trips to Lagos? We're going to Canada." So I think, like, you feel, and maybe some people in this room share the same sentiment, that even when you get the visa, you might get to the airport, and then the guy who is stamping it for some reason looks at it and says, "Oh no, you can't come and go back." You know, and then you sold your house, your car, whatever. You know, so you don't want any bad belly, any village people drama. Like, you know what? I'm just gonna keep this the secret until I'm in Saskatoon.
Thank you very much. I want to jump to when he arrived. I think what I found really, really interesting was when he met Jonathan, the potter, and who welcomed him to Canada. It was supposed to be a good thing, but that feeling, you know, when a fellow Nigerian tells you welcome to Canada, it's not the way a non-Nigerian will say, "Oh, welcome to Canada." It has a very different meaning. So would you like to read that portion so people understand? Yes, where he was asking, I think, let's see. Just start from, let's see. Maybe you go to 146.
Okay, we start from part of 145 and then continue from there.
Okay.
Okay. So this part of the story is set in Saskatoon, right? So a family would come to Saskatoon, and the family arrives Saskatoon, and once they're out of the plane, Owoicho and Ochanya follow the directions indicated by the green and white arrows lining the four walls of the concourse. The signs led them straight to the spacious baggage claim area that looked nothing like the confined spaces he was used to seeing, even in the biggest airports in Nigeria. Owoicho counted 5 carousels. By the time he located the one assigned to their plane, other passengers had taken up the best spots around it. It was obvious from how quickly they got there that most of them were familiar with the geography of the facility. While Ochanya went in search of a porter, her father positioned himself between an elderly Indian couple and a Chinese woman who didn't look like she was a day older than 30, even though he knew she was. He knew this because he sat opposite her and her teenage daughter in the departure lounge in Toronto while waiting for their connecting flight to Saskatoon. Owen chose that spot between the Indians and the Chinese because he gave him enough room to grab and maneuver his suitcases off the carousel without holding up anyone or interrupting the baggage flow. He also gave him a good view of all the items coming out of the chute linked to the boiling metal and protective neoprene contraption. By the time Ochanya returned with the porter, her father was already pulling the first of their 6 bags to the ground. The fellow, dressed in a script all-blue janitorial uniform and a black crested hat, was all smiles as he helped Owoicho with the remaining suitcases. Because the man had an unmistakable Ghanaian accent, Owoicho thanked him in pidgin English every time he came back to stand beside him after dropping a bag in his cart. The very last item out of the conveyor belt belonged to the Adakoles. It was a brown, customized Ghana Must Go bag containing the best of their enlarged family photos. Because he didn't know where to keep them and he didn't wish to throw them away either. Owoicho wrapped as many framed photographs as the bag could contain, and he was glad he did. Even more than the documents and clothes they traveled with, what he treasured the most were the happy memories in every photo that made it to Saskatoon. The love he and Ernest shared was captured in their wedding photograph. The fruit of that love was evident in every individual portrait of the 4 children God blessed their union with. And although they didn't have money for lavish birthday parties at the time, he and Ernest made it a tradition to have a portrait of each child made when they turned 1. It became their one indulgence every time there was something to celebrate in the family. No doubt some of the frames hadn't aged well, and the portraits had become old and faded, but the memories they evoked remained everlasting. Is that everything? The porter inquired. Owecho saw him size up the last bag as if wondering whether or not he should ask for help to get it off the ground and onto his cart. Yes, John, that's all we've got. Owecho called him by his name, to which the Ghanaian acted visibly surprised. You know my name? A Turkish-looking, bearded and well-spoken airport auxiliary employee asked with a resolute smile plastered on his face. The tag on your shirt, it says you are Jonathan Dumelu, Owecho pointed out. Are you related to John Dumelu, the Ghanaian actor? I get asked that a lot, but no, we're not related, and in fact, I have never met him. I am also not an actor, although I used to be on television a lot before I moved from Kumasi to Saskatoon about 3 years ago. Really, it was Owecho's turn to be surprised. What did you do on TV? I used to sing for one of the most powerful televangelists back in Ghana. He was a popular pastor and he would call me up to sing before he started preaching. That is how I became popular too. And most people in Ghana know me as the Salvation Place singer, after the name of the church. I mean, I'm walking on the streets and people are shouting the name of the church, shouting my name and begging me to sing for them. I was doing very well, I tell you. I was also a chartered accountant in my municipal government, and the job paid very well. Honestly, it paid really well, and I was comfortable. The smile didn't leave his face, though Owecho saw traces of sadness in his eyes as he told his story. If so, what are you doing here working as a porter? Brother, you will soon learn, Owecho replied ominously. He kept the smile, but this time he didn't match the gloominess on the rest of his face. At this point, Owecho concluded that John's smile was dubious. It was part of his uniform and not at all from his heart. Obviously, it was an act he had to put up for his bosses if he wanted to stay employed. In his head, Owecho could see the exact page and paragraph in the office handbook where it was written, "You will lose your job the day you get a complaint that you are not smiling." Though Owecho wasn't Ghanaian, he knew that in West Africa, no well-educated person would be smiling and happily doing a job that could be considered lower than their educational qualification and perceived status in society. People aspire to go higher, get better jobs, and move on to bigger things. The reverse was never the case. The journalist in him couldn't help wondering what John's backstory was, what the singer/accountant turned porter wasn't telling him, and what the young man truly felt about the job he did at the airport. Owecho wondered why he didn't just change jobs if he wasn't happy with the current one. What do you mean by that statement, "You will soon learn"? Owecho asked, wanting to tease out some more information from his fellow African. I take it you and your daughter are permanent residents arriving in Saskatoon for the first time. Brother, all I can say is, welcome to Canada.
Thank you for that. So when a Nigerian says, welcome to Canada and you will soon learn, it usually has a deeper meaning. Speak to us about that.
Well, it's interesting.
Don't give away too much.
No.
Because they have to read the book. But just, when a Nigerian tells you, you will soon learn. Let me put it in that accent. You will soon learn. Welcome to Canada.
Well, but I think ultimately they're saying, oh, reality will soon hit you. It's all the excitement of being an immigrant, whether you're a refugee, and there's war in your country, circumstances have forced you to move, or you came because of your children. I see so many lovely kids here, and I know as a parent myself, that thing that drives you to want to give your children greater opportunities. and says, you know what, I'm going to pack up my life and I'll move to Canada or the US or the UK or anywhere for the kids, or whether it was just for, you know, economic reasons or opportunities in education, you take that hard decision to leave your home and start a new home somewhere else, right? So when you first arrive, and this might be the case for a lot of people, there's the excitement, the euphoria. I remember in my case, like I was tempted to like just go on the floor at the airport, like I made it, you know. But it's like a honeymoon, really, with the place you just moved into, because before long, certain realities hit you. The reality that you may not necessarily have friends, so you're cut off from the things that are familiar to you. The food, the smells, the street, the traffic, you know, the people, having your parents or your aunts come to the house and take care of your kids, and now you have to pay so much for childcare, you know. I can walk into my neighbor's house anytime. I don't have to knock or text you and say, can I visit you on Thursday? I can come tomorrow, you know. It's all those things that are very different. But those are even like the social cultural things. There's also the financial part of it, you know. Getting a job, realizing that you're a medical doctor in India, you're a medical doctor in Pakistan, and you come here and you can't be a medical doctor here. You have to, there's so many cab drivers and Uber drivers who have given up their dreams of ever being those things, right? So the reality hits you that you have to have Canadian work experience, you have to have Canadian qualifications, so people go and reinvent themselves. There are people who come into Canada from other countries as managers in banks, and then they end up, you know, in care homes, taking care of the elderly. I mean, it's not a bad thing to do, but that wasn't what you were promised, or that wasn't the impression or notion you had coming here. So all those realities hit you. The reality of having to, you know, if you came in as an economic immigrant, there's a certain amount of money you should have, your proof of funds, and that technically should allow you to survive here for a few months before you find your feet. And every time until you get a job, you look at your bank account and the exchange rate, but when you spend, the money is going, you know, so all those reality hits you. And so you would find somebody like Jonathan Dumelu, who was an accountant, end up working at the airport, you know, helping people with their luggage. That's a great waste, if you ask me.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned like when you talk of survival jobs, I know that when I worked in settlement. It's now, I think the word has been glorified. It's now called transition jobs. But it's still a survival job. We all know that. We all know that. So I want to just go to this quick portion where here they were talking about names. And I think it's that, I don't want to call it loss of identity, because a lot of us come here and we find that in the end we end up not using our first names many times. Sometimes we have to adopt names Canadians can pronounce. In the beginning I used to wonder, why don't you just make an effort to say my first name? If you can say Schwarzenegger, why can't you say Olunosen? Why does it have to be Louisa? But the reality sometimes is when that resume goes out there and you don't get any response, you know? So here I saw that on page 164, yeah, just this, yes, the first paragraph there where Ochanya is having a conversation with Auntie Bigbe, who now says, call me Bree.
Did you say 164?
164.
Okay.
Yeah, just the paragraph there.
I don't have an answer to that question, Ochanya, but don't worry. Shebi, you'll soon start school here, and your dad too will be going out to look for work, Abi. When that time comes, you both understand how important it is that Canadians can pronounce your names easily, or better still, that you have English names that can at least open the door for you until you walk in and they realize you're not white. Like them, but black.
Black, okay. I want to stop there. do you think that thing does anything to us as people? Because I know someone, I showed up at a job once and the person went, oh, I thought you were Italian. And I went, but my last name is Ivaze. But she pronounced it as Ives. I went, oh, wow. Do you think that does anything to us as people? Because I know there is depression, you go into that depression, that struggle period. You think it does anything?
Well, there's some desperation, right? The thing about this is like, it's not clear. It kind of leaves you confused. Like, okay, for instance, when I first came, I know how many resumes and applications I put out there, and I never got a call back, right? And my name is Micheal. Maybe my last name is a giveaway, but at least my first name is Micheal, right? But the people who come in with really, really African sounding names, and if you don't get those callbacks, it may not be because of your name, let's be honest, but you will think that maybe it was, right? Like if my name was Carlton Harrison, right? I would never wonder what anybody thought about my name if it showed up somewhere, right? But if my name was Oyumbrakemi Kajiri Rama or whatever, like when that frustration starts to hit you, when that desperation starts to hit you, it leaves you asking questions, and that frustration can drive you to say, you know what, I'm not gonna be Kajiri whatever, I'll just make it Kaji. So maybe if Kadi pops up somewhere, then they'll at least call me into the room for a conversation. And at that point, it depends on how well I'm able to sell myself. So those things happen. And my response is always the uncertainty. It may not be the case, but it leaves you wondering, could it be? Yeah.
Okay. Then we follow Owoicho as he's trying to find work. After sending out his resume a couple of times, and Bree is talking to him about, and her husband are talking to him about the reality of starting off with survival jobs, and his initial reluctance. So, because I'm just wondering, initially I was going to say read out a portion, but I'm just thinking, let's just talk about that. Yeah, so people can go read and find out about that. Do you think, because a lot of people say it, that Canada is a leveler? Maybe that is a Nigerian term, we'd say, because in Nigeria, there are some people who, based on the social class you belong to, you never really cross paths. But in Canada, once you come here as immigrants, you find yourselves in the same survival job. Oh, and you lived on my street, we never spoke. But today we are doing the same job. Remember, because like when he got that job where he needed to go, I think it was stacking chickens or something, and he met someone who said, oh, I remember seeing you on TV. So do you think Canada is a leveler?
Well, definitely it is. But I like the fact that Canada is a leveler. Like, I like that fact. Like, say, in the neighborhoods I've lived, in Saskatoon, I don't know how it is in Ottawa, everyone lives in the same area, like, like the farmer, the engineer, the plumber, they all use the same Kenneth, what's this truck that's everywhere?
Garbage truck.
No, not the garbage truck, the Ford truck. Like, everyone drives a Ford truck. Like, when it's summer, everyone has a boat in the back of their car. Like, you don't know who. Well, you see that a lot, right? I mean, at least in Saskatoon, like, in most neighborhoods you live, you would notice, you can't tell who is at a certain income level and who isn't, everyone shops in Walmart, like everyone goes to McDonald's, like you see people in the same places. So I like that part. I mean, from my experience, I like that it's hard to say, I'm in Nigeria, for instance, and we have Banana Island. Like, you can't go there. You can't go there, But in Canada and in Saskatoon, from my experience, there's this thing that levels everyone. So I like that fact. Like, people might be, earning over $100. You still find them in the thrift stores buying stuff. I really like that. But the fact also for somebody who is an immigrant having a different experience and coming from a different background, you also come here and experience that thing that, oh, the culture is different here, and it humbles you, it levels you. In my experience, at least, I mean, part of the inspiration for the poem I read at the start, going to look for work, transition jobs like you call it. And after being frustrated, not being called for interviews, and having gone through all those experiences, I eventually get the opportunity to have one of those survival jobs. And I was being interviewed, it was a written interview, and the questions to fill out, and they're asking things like, have you ever lifted 20, 30 kg or 50 kg or something? I quickly said yes, you know. Have you ever worked as a security guard? I was like the manager in the office, you know, but I had to say, yes, I have experience, you know, that sort of thing. So it levels you. You just kind of realize that, okay, for me to move on, I have to strip myself. And you touched on it, like identity, right? So it was at that point I started feeling lost. I wasn't sure who I was anymore. And whenever, you know, maybe there's a phone call or something, I immediately want to switch hats. Okay, I sent in my CV somewhere, my resume somewhere, and in that resume, I was a carpenter. So, is this the call for the carpenter job? Then I quickly have to switch my, you know, that sort of thing. Oh, this is the resume interview for the cold room. I have a matching experience, you know, to tie that in. This is the resume I threw in for the communications job. And at some point, I wasn't sure who I was anymore, and how quickly I could switch back to who I really was and who the employer was seeking at that time. You know, so it's confusing and it's humbling.
Yeah, thank you. So as a Nigerian, you say in Canada there is no big man. And
There's
no difference between big man and ordinary man.
I'm losing my pidgin English.
I remember when I came, one of my first jobs was at a call center, and this woman, I picked up this call and she said, can I speak with someone who speaks English? And I went, I'm speaking English. And you know, that day I went home and I went, I won't lose my Nigerian accent. I will keep it. I have to be intentional about that. So I'm going to go to Ochania, the child here. And what you know, here, when she was talking about, where she was worried about accents, I realized that in Canada, Nigerian Canadian children tend to have a home accent and a school accent. And I noticed that from my nephew. One time he was ill and we had to call 911. And they asked him, so what's your name? And I and my sister went, Kanto Juku. And then the boy goes, Kanto. So, what effect do you think it has on children? Because I notice when they come here, they become more outspoken, which they are usually not. And then they start to have allergies and intolerance to the things they used to eat back home. What do you think it does to them?
Yeah, I know, like sometimes I'm in the room or some part of the house, and I hear my two boys talking to themselves, and I'm like, are those my kids? They don't like or they're on the phone talking to someone, and I'm like, I don't recognize this person. So yeah, for kids, that dual identity definitely would happen to them. They have to fit in school, and I know, like my older boy, when we first got here, was already a teenager, and even though in Nigeria, like, he was really outgoing, he was like, you know, class prefect and things like that, and then he came here, like, he would be in drama and debates and stuff like that back home in Nigeria, and then he came here and he wasn't in any of those things. And eventually opened up and said, oh, he was conscious of his accent, like the way he sounded was a problem for him, so he would rather not put himself out there. So it's harder for teenagers, it's hard for teenagers who make that transition. It's easier for kids who are a lot younger, because they just come in and they just, even with I don't know what the weather is like in Ottawa, but in Saskatoon, it gets really, really cold, like -40, -50 sometimes. And Sometimes you see the kids in that weather, like they're not wearing they're not layered up, so they adapt a lot easier. But let's not be mindful that sometimes we focus a lot, and I know, if you've had experience in the settlement sector, there's a whole aspect of settlement that focuses on youth and kids and children, which is very important. But because we're the ones who run the show, we often think of ourselves first. Like as Micheal, like a lawyer, a writer from Nigeria, like I worry about my problems. And sometimes in worrying about your problems, you could forget about that the children are even having a harder time than you, and they can't talk about it, that sort of thing. So, in this book, I try to put that perspective out there, like how this might happen, and things just changing your name or changing your accents, because you feel like you would be more accepted if you sounded that way. But the thing though is like that choice, whether it was forced because of circumstances or it was a decision you made by yourself, at some point Canada has to be home for you. So it's not so much about changing anymore, but this is now the new you. And I know, like, I haven't been to Nigeria since I came back, but I know that something about me has changed. And I know, and I see that with my friends who even go back, like, well, go Canada, I'm stressed, blah, 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 And then they go back home to Nigeria, and they can't stay, like, they can't fit in there anymore. Canada has, whether you like it or not, this place is now your home, so.
Yeah. So what you just said, where you say Canada is now your home, where sometimes you travel back and experience all kinds of things, and when you're on the aircraft coming back, you tell yourself the aircraft is not flying fast enough. I remember my first experience with the first time I experienced black ice. I got off the bus and I found myself gliding across the road and I didn't understand what was going on. Yeah. So just to wrap up, I want to wrap up this conversation. So I give people the opportunity to ask questions and then go and buy the book to find out more. The story of Oroma. Because when people think about immigration, they think that people come here mainly for economic reasons. But I'm looking at Oroma, she came here for love. She quit her good job and everything, and then, like Nigerians would say, they served her breakfast or the food buffet. So you look at people who leave home, come for love, come for economic reasons, some come here for a better future for their children. It shows you how resilient we are. In the end, do you think all that stress and all the struggle is worth it?
Absolutely, absolutely. When we look at our kids, and as flimsy as this might sound, right? As flimsy as this might sound, when I look at my kids, I'm happy I made the choice. Were things rosy back home? Yes, maybe no. But we did have our challenges. Some of it was political, just the political structure, insecurity and things like that. And for months before we arrived, maybe even years before we got to Canada, we wouldn't sleep properly at night. The part of Nigeria where I lived, the Niger Delta in Yanagoa, at that time, things have changed from what I hear. But at that time, there was hardly a night you won't hear gunshots. Armed robbers, kidnappers have come. My neighbor's wife I know was kidnapped, So every night you sleep with one eye open. And that happened for months or years before we got here. And so the first night we got here, 4 years ago, was the first time I would sleep in many months and just sleep and really not worry about anything, So I'm happy here for sure. There are things I don't have to worry about. I've gone out, left the house on more than one occasion and forgot to lock my garage door, close my garage door. And I'm back 8 hours later, and I'm not worried. Like I have to drive back home and close the garage. Like I don't have to worry about things like that. Education and so many things. So I'm happy, like, and I wish that if I can bring every member of my family here as well. Like, there are challenges, of course, but I still know that if my brothers were here, my sisters were here, we can all make a family here, and we can all be happy here. Of course, there are opportunities here, and there's a reason why we come here. And another thing that was shocking really was, I was speaking to him a while ago, that you could know stuff, you could be educated, you could be a professor, you could be a journalist, you could be whatever. You could know these stories, but being here is different. Like, the experience is different when you're here. It's different from what you've read, it's different from what you know. So just that being here and experiencing it for yourself, and you can't express it enough. And maybe that's why people don't even talk about it or write it, because it's difficult for you to express how a place is difficult, but you still can't leave. It's very difficult to express it. And I realized when I got here that, oh, no wonder nobody tells me, like, this guy picks me up from the airport, we drive around for days, and he keeps saying to me, Michael, I'm going to work. Why doesn't he tell me where he's working? Why doesn't he tell me where he's working? And then months later, it dawned on me, oh, this is why he can't tell me why he's working. This is why his family back home don't know where he's working. This is why he stopped posting his pictures on Facebook. So those things may seem flimsy, but you have to experience it to know. And I was speaking to someone else I was talking to about that feeling also of like, you know what, I'm Canadian, but I'm also Kenyan. Like, I have a grandmother in Kenya. Like that ties, it draws you, So it's
Yeah, I would have gone into the conversation of why people don't tell you what they really do here, but I'll let you guys find out when you read the book. So now, are you Micheal or Michael? Since you say it's worth it, so which are you? Are you Michael or Micheal?
For those of you who read Mechanics of Yanagua, that book starts with the protagonist saying, my name is Ebinimi. I don't like people calling me Ebi or Nimi. I'm that guy. My name is Michael. I don't like people calling me Mike or anything else.
Okay, all right. Is there anything else you would like to tell us? Any other, just tidbit you want to give us about the book before we wrap up and open the floor for questions?
Well, just to say like how amazing, like, Canada is a great country, really. Like, how amazing Canada is, and in spite of the truth, I try to speak about in this book, I have made amazing friends in this country. Those are my colleague in Saskatoon, JP. Those are his parents. Like, imagine them coming, knowing that, oh, my former co-worker, is having an event here in Ottawa, and they show up for me. Like, how deeper can friendship get? I've really, really made amazing friends. I've known amazing people who have showed up for me. And I said a few stories. One would be how I just moved into this new house, and because I had this Canadian friend, Danilo, and Danilo visited me one day, and then he said, Michael, your gas is leaking. I'm like, my gas is leaking? No. There's a leaking gas there's a smell in your house. Like, I can't perceive it. And then he says, there is, your gas is leaking. Let's call Sask, the authority, I can't remember what it's called now. So we call Sask Energy. And then they came, and truly my gas was leaking, and I probably would have died if Danilo hadn't visited me that day, because I didn't know what that smell was. In Nigeria, when your gas is leaking, it's a different smell. When they say gas is leaking, it's a different smell. But this was a very unintrusive smell. I was living in it and I didn't know. So Danilo saved my life. Another example was when I first came, and there's a Nigerian edition of this book, and I had to. The cover is different, and the cover is a photograph of Saskatoon, and that photograph was taken by a guy called Bob, and Bob is now a friend. And Bob, I met him at an event. I was volunteering at, and we got talking. He knew I was a writer, and almost every photograph, a lot of photographs, my photographs you'll see on Instagram was taken by Bob. I don't know how much it costs to take a professional photograph here in Ottawa, but it's very expensive in Saskatoon. Bob has never collected $1 from me, a loonie or toonie from me for any photograph he has taken of me. And when it was my first winter, it was like October-ish, the winter hadn't started, it hadn't even snowed. And Bob told me, well, let's meet at Tim Hortons. So we meet at Tim Hortons. And then after coffee, he says, follow me to my car. And we get to his car, and Bob says, I have something for you. And Bob gives me a winter jacket. And he says, it's going to be very cold soon. I don't know if you have this, if you can afford one, but you'll be needing it very soon. So my very first winter jacket came from my friend Bob, a Canadian, a white Canadian. So, like, I've met really amazing people, and I don't have any regrets. Amazing people in Saskatoon, and I don't have any regrets if I have to leave my bones in Saskatoon.
Okay. I'm glad you don't have any regrets. So you're now Micheal. I just want to say, well, thanks for writing this ode to Saskatoon. It's amazing that now you've got people trying to say that name Saskatoon and Saskatchewan, which a lot of people still find difficult back home. But I just want to say a very big thank you. I want to open the floor for questions. To the author, not to me, please. Yeah, but I'll just explain. I'll explain. When I had said being served breakfast in the Nigerian term, that means a heartbreak for people who don't understand. So
when they say you've been served breakfast in Nigeria, it means somebody's broken up.
Broken your heart, yeah.
In a terrible way.
For people who have questions, Ria would pass the microphone to you.
How much are the bucks?
I love that question.
What made you start writing books?
What made you start writing books?
Is that what you asked? What made you start writing books?
Louisa is going to tell you the cost of the book.
I'll tell you the cost of the book, okay? Yeah, I will.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know. I just kind of realized when I was, maybe even younger than you, I was like in maybe about 6 or so, 6, 7, and I was in elementary school, and I would tell stories to my classmates. When it was break time, I would just tell stories. So I knew I started telling stories right from when I was that young. And I remember then, like, and don't ever do this, but I should just say it because it's the truth. I would tell these stories, and they were so believable that my classmates would give me their lunch. And I was really young, and I don't know how. And I remember then when I was in high school, I then joined the press club, and we would write stories for the school magazine, kind of. And I remember I wrote a story once, and my classmate, she read the story before it was published, and she started crying. Like, And I thought, why was she crying because of something I wrote? So I knew then that I had some kind of gift. I could do this, and that became the motivation for me to continue writing. And writing was also, as a kid, I wasn't very athletic. I wasn't like I didn't go out like my brothers would jump out and do things like that. So writing for me was when they had all gone out to play or whatever. It was the thing that kept me occupied, and also gave me a sense of confidence. I wasn't a very confident kid, but whenever I wrote, people would say nice things about what I have written. So it made my confidence grow. So I just kept on doing it, right? So yeah.
Is there like a why did you choose this particular cover for your book? Is there like a story behind it?
Thank you. Yeah, now you want to make me reveal like secrets of publishing. Well, so typically when a book is written and you have somebody who is going to publish it for you, they will get a team to come together, read the story or get a summary of the story and try to come up with a cover for the book. So this was like a design that they came up with. Okay, since it says "Leave my bones in Saskatoon," maybe we should have a depiction of bones. And then the flowers there are called, some of the flowers there, there's like the Saskatoon lily. Yeah, so it kind of depicts Saskatoon. And there's also something I can't give away. When you read the book, it will then make sense. Okay, this is the cover or whatever, but it's a secret. And when you know how much the book is and you convince your parents to buy it, which they must.
No. Many years ago, I moved from Saskatoon to Nigeria in February. And it was a shock. Like, it was a really big change. And I got sick. Can you tell me, like, when you arrived at the airport in Saskatoon, and you said to yourself, what is this place? What was the answer? Also, how has your view of Saskatoon changed? You've been very positive about it, but how has it changed over the years?
Very good question. So, luckily for me, I didn't come to Saskatoon in February. I came in August. So the weather was, well, relatively, like it was summer, right? But it was summer, and I remember when we went out to the auctions in August, and everybody around me was wearing shorts. So I thought, okay, yeah, this is August, I can wear shorts. It didn't occur to me that I hadn't yet adjusted to the weather. And so wearing shorts in the house or wearing shorts in the car or wearing shorts to the grocery store and back is different from wearing shorts outside for 2 hours. And I started shivering, But then that was good. Wait until winter started. And it was -50. And I was like, Micheal, why did you come here? Like, I kept having to remind myself, like, Micheal, why did you, what were you thinking? But it's funny because I realized this past winter, I didn't layer up as much. So I think I also became a Canadian citizen this February. So I think that it's because I'm now Canadian.
Micheal, how has the world, other than the African readers, how have they accepted your book or your books? What do you think of acceptance due to the fact that you're Black and or in this environment, and you're a writer, so what's the acceptance rate? Like, how are you finding positivity in all of this?
That's a good question. And quickly back to you, I think like for me, I think like attitude in this whole immigrant journey and experience, and then whether you moved from Nigeria, from Saskatoon to Lagos or Abuja or anywhere, or you moved from Chile to to the UK, I think like attitude matters. Like your attitude matters, and for me, I've always kept a positive attitude throughout my journey. Like I got to a point where when it was difficult, I said, Michael, when you made this choice, right? You made this choice. Forget about what is this a new trajectory for you, and to make it here, you have to forget about certain things. Because if you don't, then you can't move on. And the culture is different. It's nobody's fault that if if your faucet was broken, or okay, another example, like I have this friend and was moving into a new house, and his mother came. His mother, who was probably in her 60s, came and painted the house for him. Like that's never going to happen in Nigeria. Like why would your mother come and paint your house for you? You know? What is a different culture? So you have to accept that the culture is different. You know? So that positive energy is what has kept me going, and I don't want to ever lose that positive energy. You know, so that's very important for me. And to your question about acceptance, I think like a story I share, all the time. It was being invited to a book event in Saskatoon, and I was to read from The Mechanics of Yanagua, and there's a lot of pidgin English in that book, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to read to a white audience, so I need to be very selective about what I'm reading. So I go through the book and I pick portions where it's very pristine, high level, to my mind, high level, whatever, elevated English. So I go there and I read to the audience. And there's a lady there who has read the book, a white lady. So she came to me and was like, Michael, do you know why I came here today? I wanted to hear you read in pidgin English. See the irony of it. So there's been, I think, like, one thing again that shocked me about coming to Canada was I thought, okay, I'm coming to Canada and there'll be black and there'll be white people, right? But there's all sorts of people. So that diversity means that there's a thirst, there's a hunger. And so I've noticed that across, even like people will send me messages from the UK, from all over the world really, that, oh, we just read your book and we like it and whatever. So I think like, even globally, people want more, people are looking for more, people are looking for different, and different is great, right? And people want to hear Burna Boy and and Davido, like people want Afro beats. So I'm just riding in that way. Like, okay, maybe now that they like Burna Boy, maybe they'll like Michael too.
Thank you, Michael, for reading, and I'm looking forward to getting the book and reading the whole story. But I am curious, like when you came to Canada, why did you choose Saskatoon instead of Ottawa or say Edmonton or Calgary? And when you arrived, did you actively seek out an African community, or were you received into like a Nigerian community or African community? And how did that affect you integrating into the community? And if you know how that also affected your kids? Yeah, I'm just curious about that, like the African community, Nigerian community in Saskatoon, and yeah, the whole experience.
Yeah, thank you. That's a really great question. So, and to be honest, like I never knew about Saskatoon. I never heard about Saskatchewan ever. And when we started the process of coming to Canada, definitely thought we were going to end up in Toronto because that was the only place I knew. Was Toronto, Ottawa, like those Montreal, you hear those like, I never knew of a place called Saskatoon or Saskatchewan, but we had an agent we worked with who processed our documentation. And then he says, okay, Micheal, at this point in your life, your best option is to go to Saskatoon because they have a point system that will favor you, right? So I'm like, okay, Saskatoon, where? And I remember I even told a friend, that eventually that I was going to Saskatoon. So a Nigerian ethical professor, who is my friend, he then went and Googled Saskatchewan, and then he was like, oh, Regina. I'm like, Regina, where is that? And I said, that's the capital of Saskatchewan. And I didn't have a clue, so I didn't know, the point system is encouraging for immigrants. And so we ended up in that city. And the Nigerian community really was welcoming. Like, when we came in, church and stuff like that was really welcoming, still is. But again, for me, back to his question, I got to a point where I said to myself, look, Micheal, if you want all this Nigerianness around you, you for stay for Lagos, like you could have stayed back in Nigeria, right? Like I cannot come to Nigeria, to Canada, as much as I want that familiarity of my culture and everything around me, I still need to embrace other cultures as well. So I made an active and conscious decision to make friends with other people, with other cultures, and not remain in my Nigerian bubble. Because if I did that, I was never ever going to learn, so it was a conscious decision on my part. And I encourage my kids as well, like to be open. That's the beauty of being here, so why not take advantage of it?
As you have written your books, when you were younger, did you have did you want to write, or did the idea of writing come as you got older?
Good question. I think I always wanted to write. Like that was at some point, maybe in my late teens or something. At some point, I kind of knew that if I didn't write, if I didn't become a writer, I would feel incomplete. I would be incomplete. So I always knew that I was going to write a book. I always knew I was going to publish a book. So really, I got to a point in my life where I decided that I was not going to read again. So I stopped reading because it was the only way to get me to write my own book. Like I said to myself, until I publish my novel, I'm not reading any novel. I'm not reading anyone else. And reading was my life as well. So that target, that pressure I set on myself kind of propelled me to then go ahead and write my first book. And after writing my first book, I couldn't get a publisher, but I'd written my manuscript and I went ahead and self-published my first book just because I wanted to have that experience. And I've given up a lot of things at this stage in my life. I've given up a lot of things for my writing, including even my law practice, profession or whatever. Like I place my writing above anything else. So yeah.
Thank you, Micheal. Thank you, everyone, once again for making our time to join us here today. I'll let Professor Ochuno, the director of the Carleton Institute of African Studies, say the final remarks, and then we'll start our book signing. So for people who would like to purchase the book, it's your opportunity to purchase the book. Take a picture, snap, but remember other people too will be standing behind you. So keep it nice and short. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone, and our special guest writer for today. Welcome to Ottawa, and it's so great to have you in our midst. I'd like to use this opportunity to thank all of you for coming out this afternoon. It's a very lovely weather, and it's a great time as well not to think about bones only, but also to think about life. This has been our pleasure at the Institute of African Studies at Carleton University to collaborate with the Ottawa Black Book Club, very ably managed by my friend Louisa. We feel very honored and privileged to be able to co-host this event because I know that for some time the Ottawa Book Club, the Ottawa Black Book Club, has been operating under COVID conditions. A whole lot of this has been virtual, and it's so great to be in person. Not only to be in person in an event like this, but to have a special guest writer who doesn't come to us in the winter with -50, but in a very warm, sunny, very tropical as it were, to be together here. And then also to offer the opportunity. I was deeply touched when you talked about your colleagues' father, parents, being here. So beyond that, I am also profoundly touched to see young people here, to see children. So here we are. It looks like a very small gathering, but there are generations, different generations, about 3 generations at least, seated right here and having conversation about a great book that doesn't also focus on Ottawa or Canada as it were, but is in conversation between Africa and Canada, between Nigeria and Canada and different other countries. That's what books do. Books bridge boundaries. At the Institute of African Studies, we like also to bring Africa to Canada. And on the other way, we also take Canada to Africa. That's what we do, that's what our institute do. And I am very excited about the young people and very thoughtful questions. Those questions make me confident that some of you are going to become writers. And I wish we could keep track of you and to see how events like this inspire you. I would like to recognize our colleagues from West Africa who have joined us here. We have at the Institute at this moment, the Queen Elizabeth Advanced Scholars, Women Scholars, who are here in residence for between 2 months and 6 months. And they are here today. Can I have you guys rise? Yes. Okay, yes, it's an intuition. And I had hoped that we were a bit bilingual. Sometime, I think, Louisa, next time we have an event like this, we're going to manage to make it at least some part of it bilingual, because we'll have people who are French speaking who are also here.
What I did for the kids, because I have my children's books at the back.
Okay.
So there are books in English and in French.
Oh,
for the kids.
That's fine. Without taking much of your time again, I just want to draw your attention to an event on the 27th. We have another book event, and somewhat related in terms of the title, one that deals with ecology. And the title of this book is Politics of Turbulent Waters. And it will be presented as a book launch. I have a chapter in the book. On the 27th, Tuesday, June 27th, 2023 at 11 a.m. And this will be at the Institute of African Studies. Please do, if you're interested in getting our newsletter, which goes out every Friday, and we have promoted this event. There are a lot of interesting things happening in our community. It'd be great for you to put out your name and email address, and we'll add it to our mailing list. Once again, thank you, the Ottawa Black Book Club, and most importantly, thank you, Micheal. Oh, Micheal. Afenfia. And just before I leave, on that note of name and identity, a friend of mine has a book where the protagonist's name is Ike, and he lives in the United States driving a cab. And the person who meets him, every time he introduces himself as Ike, they will say Ike. And these are 2 different things. Yes, some of the people here are already laughing. I'm not so sure I'm going to give you the full translation because it's a bit gross. And well, no, I'll leave it at that. If you want the translation, you can come to me. But you can see how accent can completely alter what you do, and how, as international people and as immigrants, you deal with sometimes a mispronunciation of your name that completely renders it almost an insult. Thank you very much, and welcome.
I promised I was going to say this because he probably doesn't even know this or even remember me. And I'm glad she asked that question because when I was younger, like he's not old, right? He's still young. But when I was younger and I just left high school, I met him because he had come to do his youth service. There's something called youth service in Nigeria. He had come to do his youth service in the state where I live, and I wanted to be a writer. And I knew he was already a great writer. So I took my manuscript to him, and he read it, and he said, "Oh, this is good, like you have potentials." And that message from him to a young boy then, who he didn't know, is what kept me writing. I'm sure he doesn't even remember me, but I always remember him, and I always look up to him as somebody who inspired me to be who I am today and where I am today. So thank you. And across so many kilometers or whatever, seas, we didn't meet in Nigeria, we ended up meeting in Canada. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for coming. All right.
Thank you, that's great. And just the way he inspired you, you are also inspiring the young ones here. So please, Micheal, time for your book signing. So please, some people who are interested.